Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. This is Mr. Payne bringing you final exam review number 5, solving and graphing quadratics and identifying their parts and forms. So right off the bat, we're going to talk about the different parts. Remember that the invisible line down the middle is called your axis of symmetry. When you are identifying your axis of symmetry, make sure you're saying that it's x equals. Your x-intercepts, or your solutions, also called your zeros or your roots, are where it hits the x-axis. Make sure you know that definition. They've asked that on the last 3 exams. So once again, your roots or your zeros or your x-intercepts are where the quadratic hits your x-axis. Your y-intercept is where your quadratic or your function hits the y-intercept. And the last one that they've also asked in the last 2 exams is state your vertex. And you have to know where your vertex can be found. Your vertex is your turning point. You write it as a point. When we talk about different types of solutions, there are 3 different types of solutions. There are 2 solutions. There is 1 solution. I'm sorry on that. That is 0 solutions. 0. And you want to write 0 down. And then there are 1 solutions. And notice all we're talking about is where my quadratic is hitting. This guy doesn't hit the x-axis at all, so that's why there's 0 solution. And this guy hits 1 time, that's why there's 1 solution. How to solve and find roots by 4 different methods. The first method we're going to talk about is graphing. Put an equation under y equals, see where it hits the x-axis. So hits the x-axis, like in the pictures above. For your table, put the equation under y equals and find on the table the x values are 0 in your answer. So wherever your y values, find on the table where your y values are 0. The x values are your answer. So find on the table where y values are 0. How to solve by factoring. Set equal to 0. Factor into your 2 parentheses. Set each parentheses to 0. Solve using T-bar method and tee it up. The other method, the quadratic formula. Set equal to 0. Identify your A, B, and C, and then go ahead and use this quadratic formula. Don't forget, when you're using your quadratic formula or you're taking the square root of something, making sure that you have a plus and a negative answer. You should always be having 2 roots if you're working it out, if you're not going to have a 1 solution or a 0 solution. But always be cautious of that. If they're asking you to solve this on the exam, most likely you're going to have 2 different answers because you have a plus and a minus answer. Alright, let's now talk about the 5th and last method called completing the square. If you all recall, the first step in completing the square is move C to the other side of the equal sign. Take half of B and square it, and then add that to both sides. So if you remember what that looks like, it's B divided by 2. B divided by 2, and then we square it. Rewrite the left as a perfect square, which equals the answer on the right. Square root both sides and solve for possible solutions. The key note here is if their question is asking for vertex form, I haven't seen any Regents questions ask you to place it into vertex form. They've always given you something in vertex form and asked you to analyze it. So I'm not too sure that they're going to have you do this, but just in case, all we do is move those numbers from the right back over to the left and leave it alone. We're not solving. Remember, if I'm asking for it in vertex form, I'm not solving. So once you get to step right here, step number 3, after we solve and get that answer on the right hand side, then just move that answer back over for vertex form. If not, if we're looking for possible solutions, then you have to solve it. Hopefully that makes sense. If you have any questions, we're going to go over that with the questions on the back. So at this time, after the video, attempt whatever questions you can and come to class with questions.